Okay, welcome everyone, commissioners and the public to our February 25th City of Santa Barbara Fire and Police Commission special meeting. I now want to call that to order and do a roll call. So Carol, can you please do a roll call for us?
Sure. Chair Stedman?
Here.
Vice Chair Rodriguez?
Here.
Commissioner Allman?
Here.
Commissioner Peck, I believe, is absent, and Commissioner Travis Teague.
Here.
All right. Thanks, Carol. Well, hopefully Commissioner Peck will join us at some point. All right. Let's move on to item number 3. Are there any changes to the agenda, to today's agenda? Okay. I don't see anybody advancing any changes, so we will move on to approval of the meeting minutes, which is item number 4. Any comment on that from any of the commissioners? Diane, did you have a comment?
No, I did not. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, all right. Do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 28th, 2021?
I approve to approve the minutes. I motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, those meeting minutes have been approved and they're in the record. Now, are there any members of the public, Carol or Laura, that have their hands raised that want to make general public comment at this time?
Yes, Chair Stedman. It looks like Anna Marie Gott would like to speak, and so I will, Anna Maria, I will unmute you. Hold on just a second. I will unmute you and you can speak.
Prompt. Am I unmuted?
I think you're unmuted. Yes.
You are.
Yeah, now I am. Okay. Commissioners, I sent an email that was directed to the city staff, including the acting police chief, as well as the secretaries and acting fire chief and Mr. Doimus. I asked them to actually send this letter to you today, so I hope you have received it. The reason that I am commenting today is because I am, attended a meeting about 2 years ago where I made a request that your agendas actually include a way for residents to actually submit written comments. If you look at the agenda that you have today, which was noticed as a special meeting, and this is not a special meeting, it actually shows that the written public comment is completely devoid on the agenda. There is no way for anyone to actually make a written public comment if they just got this agenda. The only thing that they could do was call someone. I think it's really inappropriate for any board or commission, in which you, I believe, are the only commission in the city that doesn't have a way for people to submit public comments. So I'm asking that you today require all agendas moving forward an email address so that individuals can submit a written public comment in advance or for any of your future agenda items. I'd also like to just make a mention as well is that your board, which is one that has been very much highlighted over the last year regarding the police department, does not actually have a way for anyone to make a public comment unless they have internet connection and a way to actually make that public comment. They often require individuals to call in advance, leave their name and their phone number at the county so that if anyone wants to make a comment on an item, it's a really simple process. If you do that in advance, when a meeting is actually going to be occurring for a particular item, the county will call on that person, and if they answer their phone, they can make a public comment. If they don't answer their phone, they can't. And so I would really recommend that you consider adding this as a requirement for this board and recommending that it actually be required for all boards of the city, especially city council. So that's, I've used it my more than 2 minutes, and I really appreciate the extra few seconds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne Marie. And we did, for the record, we did receive your email, and we're going to be entering your written comment into the record, okay? So, looks
Can
like
I make a comment, please?
yeah, go ahead. Any
Commissioner
commissioners,
Stedman,
go ahead.
I'm wondering if we could have, ask staff to look into that, phone-in, option. I hadn't seen that take place in city meetings, but if Anne Marie Gott's, description of the county meetings is accurate, I think that would be, something that I would like to support, for the Fire and Police Commission meetings.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Vice Chair. We have that recorded, and I'm sure Carol or Laura or Attorney Doimus will follow up on that. We'll make sure it happens before our next meeting. Let's put it that way, short of an actual agenda item. Any other comments from the commissioners? Okay. And Carol, do we want to correct the record and show Commissioner Peck as being present?
Yes, we acknowledge Commissioner Peck is present. Thank you.
All right, good to see you, Max. All right. Okay, are there any other public comments or any other hands raised? All right,
No, there's not.
okay. Moving on to item number 6, subcommittee reports. There are no subcommittee reports, so none have been submitted. So we'll move right on to item number 7, which are the commission and liaison reports. So I'll hand it over to Commissioner Allman in case he has any input on the fire department side.
Yeah, the only thing is I've had communication with Chief Males over the last couple of days, email wise, and in the past I had a week prior to the meeting, I had a conversation with Chief Nickel, but we have not done that for a while, and I think we're going to try to bring that back with everybody's permission. That way I get a firsthand account of how things are going. Apparently everything's going well. I know he's going to make a report today, and I think it'll take up the space that some of what I should have had. But that's basically it.
No, any updates on the hiring selection committee activity?
Glad you asked. The 1st of March will be the first interview session. I haven't received anything from Anderson on the question formats or any of that yet. I would imagine we'd get it fairly quick because it's coming up. I haven't talked to Lamont either, so I'm waiting for some more input from the city on how that's going to be handled. And I don't know if to be how many days it's going to take. I'm not absolutely sure how many folks are in the mix at the moment. I know our current chief is, of course, our current acting chief is, but more to come on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's happening on Monday, sounds like.
True enough. So I haven't heard anything, and I don't know if Mr. Casey has anything to pass on to us. Hopefully so, because I think you and I are up. So I don't
Yeah,
know
exactly. I'm your alternate, so I'll remain on deck, and if you need anything, just let me know.
Okay, sure.
But yeah, I don't have any other details either. Sorry, guys. But apparently it's going to be coming around the corner very fast on Monday, so we'll have more to report out. Okay,
I don't know if Mr. Casey's listening in or not, but he would have to be sort of the lead on that,
right.
I imagine. That's about it.
We'll drop him a note. Fire.
About it for me.
Okay, great. So now, and thanks a lot, Jeff, Commissioner Allman, I appreciate that. Now we'll turn to our police liaison, Commissioner Max Peck. So Max, did you have any comments you want to offer the commission?
Chair Stedman, commissioners, thank you. Apologies for being a little tardy today.
Hi, Jasmine. This is Janelle.
I've been in contact with a couple
Hi,
of
I just got your
officers. However, there's nothing to report at this time, and we're trying to work out a day where I can give
Hold on,
details.
Max, somebody's talking in the background somewhere. We're picking that up. Maybe that's been muted. Sorry, Max. They were talking right over you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, that should work. I have nothing to report at this time because we're working out the process. We've talked about this before. The method that I was using previously was not in conjunction with what the police department wanted us to report on. So we're just working out those details currently. Hopefully I'll have something by the end of the quarter to present, trying to make something a little bit more formal.
Right. Hey, Max, can you check on one thing on CompuStat, the CompuStat reports coming from the police? Correct me if I'm inaccurate on this, Vice Chair, but have we seen a full CompuStat report recently? Yeah, I don't think so. So maybe that's a good follow-up item, Max. We can hunt down, the CompuStat reports, get some data flowing, right, and establish some good footing with the not only the interim police chief, but whoever gets selected eventually. So that would
Absolutely.
be helpful. Yeah, that would be helpful, Max. And it's good to see you. So, all right. All right, so I guess we've touched base with our liaisons, and we have some follow-up items there. Now we're going to move on to item number 8. Carol, can you please read that?
Sure, Chair Stedman. Item number 8, commission to vote on whether or not the history of race and policing training should be a requirement for future commissioners.
Okay, is there any discussion on this item before we take our vote?
Well, for clarification, future commissions include current commissioners.
Yeah, that occurred to me when we were reviewing the reviewing the minutes of the last meeting and then finalizing the agenda. So the intent behind this item was to include the current commissioners. And was this born out of the original discussion that you raised, Vice Chair, about the new commission that you've been selected for? Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And the training, was it that we would conduct this training and invite them, or was it the other way around?
It was separate. This is specifically because we can't dictate what another commission does.
Exactly.
So this is specifically about our commission, and it was last I think maybe August that I brought it up.
Right.
And it was really just noticing that that not everybody who's part of the Fire and Police Commission have the same base understanding of the history. So for my intention was that that commissioners would be knowledgeable of the impacts, the historical impacts and modern day impacts that policing has on diverse communities of color, and specifically that the formation of policing was around slavery and slave catching. So I think it's just very important that if we're going to be, commissioners are going to be part of such a critical infrastructure commission, that we should all be brought to an awareness of the history of both departments.
Okay, yeah, thanks for refreshing us on the context. Do any of the other commissioners have any comments or questions about this item?
I,
Go ahead,
Go
Jeff.
ahead.
Jeff, go ahead. Commissioner Allman?
The question I had, and this is just to vote the concept, I know the details have to be worked out. I know John had talked about how we can do this, and it looks as if, and of course it depends how fast this goes, would be doing it on Zoom, and there are minimal, or there are some restrictions on how we do that, numbers of commissioners or something like that, and maybe John can address that. I'm not quite sure.
Right,
Those things change radically where we get together.
right, exactly. I think there was the question of whether or not we would have closed session, closed or open session. So did you want, there he is, there's John Doynes.
Commissioners, Chair Stedman, Commissioner Allman. You have several options, right? So in a sense, you're deciding on the type of training you want. So whatever you choose, it could be individualized training. If it's more than 3, obviously, then it would have to be a meeting. Could be done in closed session. But for a lot of this, it could be done individual. What type of training you want. What's important is the source, and how do you get that source? Do you appoint one commissioner to research and find a source? You know, could be a video, a webinar, seminar on this, and for each commissioner then to view it and be part and to review it and while they're a commission. So that's the key. You basically have the framework to decide how you want to go about doing this training. I think the most important thing is you prefer to do this individually, which it can be done. That way you don't have to worry about at least Brown Act issues. It's more of a training thing. And then who you want to appoint to even pick what the subject matter is, what the source is of the training you're getting, etc. Because this is a commission imposed decision on yourselves, and it could be for current commission present, like Commissioner Rodriguez says, and it could be for future ones too, if you want to do that. Obviously, future commissions can decide we don't want to do this and have the ability themselves to vote on that. So there's a lot of flexibility because you're kind of putting the onus on yourselves of what you want to do. My only recommendation probably is 2 things, right? Number one, as I said, appoint who's going to decide what the training is from the commission, and number 2, how to view it. Probably, like I said, the easiest way would be independent webinars. We as city employees have ethics training we have to do, and we do it by ourselves, 2 hours, watch it, and comply with it. So at least that's my suggestion.
Right. And so I really appreciate that, John. You know, we have to consider that, I think, for this vote. Now, the results of the vote notwithstanding, do we need to advance the agenda item to our next meeting for basic follow-up, right? Once we decide, if we decide as a commission to make this a new requirement, do we need to dial it ahead for the next meeting to, have a report basically from the source of the training, et cetera?
You know what? Probably it'd be good especially for public transparency to do that. So what you would do is vote on if you want to do this. Choose a commissioner, maybe even 2 commissioners to decide what research and what training is recommended, and then in the next commission, here's the training. Here's how you go about it, and here's the time frame. Every commissioner should complete it on their own. That'd be the cleanest way to go about that.
Perfect. That's great advice.
And that way you can also, the public can see what the training is, et cetera, in terms of it. Well, and the reason you wouldn't probably do it at least in a regular meeting, we have a 2-hour meeting time frame. So any worthwhile training is probably going to be longer than that. So you'd probably go over that time. But the cleanest way would be decide today if you want this for this commission. It could be also just for this commission and not decided for future ones. It could be decided for both. And then it could be select, one or two commissioners to choose research and choose a type of training and get it either on for the next agenda or the following if you want to give more time. And then and then the commissioner can do the presentation of what the training is, where the source is from, why they selected this, provide information so the public would even know what you're training on, and then give a time of completion training for each of the commissioners. And that'd be it.
Excellent. Sounds so simple. So
For a little bit of additional background, I've already met with the Santa Barbara City Human Resources Department, and they are willing to help coordinate this training to bring folks in or use. The Santa Barbara Police Department is already using a history and policing training, so we may just use the same resources and possibly bring in community as well. So the Santa Barbara HR is already aware of this.
okay. Commissioner Peck, did you have something you wanted to contribute?
Yeah, I was just curious. I'm not opposed to training. I like what Attorney Doimus said too. I think generally an ethics training might be beneficial. Where my concern lies, and I guess Vice Chair Rodriguez just addressed it. If the city police department is already using this training, then it might undermine my argument. But I would just be concerned. I want to keep the lens on Santa Barbara, right? We're the commission for the city of Santa Barbara. We're not the commission for the United States. So as long as we're keeping the lens on the city that we're supposed to be representing, I would be in favor of that. So I don't know if that means maybe there's different community leaders that we could invite in on a quarterly basis to kind of give us like a community report or something like that. I would be in favor of something of that nature.
That makes a lot of sense, Max. Well, I guess why don't we take a vote? It is an agenda item, so we can take a vote on it now and determine whether or not that vote carries. And if it does, then we can make some decisions about.
Chair Stedman?
Yeah.
We do have a hand raised for this item.
Okay, we have public comment?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Let's take that before we vote.
Okay. Mr. Wassell, I'm going to unmute you. Oh, actually, maybe I'm not. Oh, he may not have an ability to have I don't see a microphone on him. Mr. Wassell, are you?
Carol, can you call in? Can Mr. Wassell call in? Give him some time to call in.
Yeah, Mr. Wassell, can you call in or not? I've never done a call in, so I don't know how that works.
Guess we'll find out. So is he indicating he's gonna try to call it? Yes, he is.
Can community members chat?
Yeah, good question, Max. I'm not sure they have that functionality available to them.
No, they don't have that functionality to chat on there. We do have a call in, and
He did say in the questions that he did call in. I just am unsure. I've never done a call-in before, so I'm not sure how that works.
It should be,
Should just be able to dial in, right, John?
from my understanding,
Oh,
correct.
wait, here we go. Mr. Wassell, did you enter the PIN? Um,
There is a phone, so if you look at the corner functions, there's computer, audio, phone call. So I don't know if his computer's on at the same time as the phone call, but there's a way just to call right into the go-to meeting. So he should call in, enter the PIN number, press the pound, and then he's allowed, and he should be allowed in. And there should be a recognition of a phone call, person waiting in for the public comment. Just like you would see someone raising their hand, there should be the same trigger.
yeah, I see a phone, but it's crossed off, and then it says attendee can't be unmuted until they enter their PIN. Click to send their PIN. And I'm not sure, I click it, but nothing happens. Sorry,
It's okay.
oh, his phone went away, so.
All right, well, maybe he'll.
Oh.
we'll get-
I'm sorry, I'm seeing a conversation here with Anne Marie Gott was trying to help him. He may not have a computer. Can I accept his comment via the questions?
Yeah,
You can read in his comments, absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Wassall, if you're able to make a comment in the question box, can you type it in there and I'll read it to the commission? Oh, he said, I will pass due to technology issues. Thanks to the commission.
okay. All right, so,
So can I make a motion to start this?
well, we could just proceed to the vote. Carol can do a roll call.
But
vote.
what
So,
are we
yeah,
voting on though?
Go ahead, John.
I think we probably do need a motion just to devote on if what a couple things in that parameter of it, right? In terms of
to expand.
who's to do the training. There's gonna be a subcommittee and who's is going to apply to present and future commissions, however you want to detail it, because there's several things you can go with here.
Right, but all right, so we're gonna have a motion in advance of the vote that's on the agenda. Is that correct?
So I'll make the motion and then we'll see how that fits in. So my motion is to require a history of policing training for current and future commissioners of the Fire and Police Commission, and recommend 1 to 2 commissioners to work with the city HR department in developing the training.
Okay. We have a second.
I second the motion.
All those in favor? Say aye.
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 3 ayes. All those. I say aye as well. All those opposed?
This needs to be maintained at the current level. because I think
Opposed?
it's like-
Can I abstain?
I can't remember what the amount
Yeah.
is right now.
All right, so looks like the vote is 4-1. 4 yeas, 1 nay, 0 abstentions. Yeah, that's fine, Max. All right. so the motion carries. Now we're going to vote on the item, right?
I think we already voted on the item. I think now what we'll do is we'll appoint 2 commissioners to work with the HR department to develop the training.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand what we've done here administratively. We had an item, a simple item as to whether to vote on the training. So we bypassed that in our discussion about context, and that morphed into a motion, a new motion. So my question for the city staff is, does the motion override the original agenda item?
Hold on 1 second, Commissioner. I'm just trying to get my camera out. And I apologize for the darkness of it. My daughter's got a friend over screaming, doing gymnastics. Here's the issue. The document notices what the item is, right? So per the Brown Act, you have to give a description of what the commission is considering. In this case, it's very fair. The commission is considering requiring a training for commissioners to understand racial justice issues and bias, and requiring such a training for all the commissions, right? So how it's constructed in terms of the actual logistics and the parameters of it is currently appropriate how to do so. So it all falls into this agenda item. So the issue is, do you want to do the training, right? And then to help clarify for staff in the meeting minutes and to know how you proceed forward is, we want to do the training. We appoint two commissioners to bring forth and select the training that we're going to choose to do, or one, or whatever you want to do. And if you want to give instruction to work with HR staff, that's all fine to do so. That's how this is going to be executed. So the agenda item outlays what the issue, what you're going to vote on, and it's requiring such a training for the commission. And what the motion includes is the detail on how you're going to execute what you've decided to accomplish.
Okay, all right. That makes sense to me. All right, so the motion carries. The training then, thank you, John.
You're welcome.
The training will be a requirement for present and future commissioners. That vote carried. Now we are going to decide on a couple of commissioners to organize the training, basically. It sounds like the source has already been identified. It's already been in the process of being validated by the city. So a lot of that legwork is already done, right? So we just need a couple of commissioners to shepherd this process forward, right? And do we have any volunteers for that process? Okay, Lizzie, you're one. Do we have anyone else who wants to be part of that process? Hey, Diane? All right. So let the record reflect that Vice Chairman Rodriguez and Commissioner Travis Teague are going to be the two commissioners that will organize this process for us. And then we're going to advance this item as an agenda item to the next meeting, right, John?
Correct. Yeah, 100% correct, Commissioner Chair Stedman. What we'll do is, it's already will be on the agenda item with the full detail for the public to see, and a presentation from the two commissioners. You know, council members do it all the time. Here's the training we selected. Why? Here's what we've worked with HR. Here's why I recommend it. Here's the source. Here's what it details. You know, this is the time frame we recommend each commissioner review this, do this by, and et cetera. It's very important for the public to know what training you're receiving on this issue, and let them know that. And so, yes, commissioners, when they're ready, can do a presentation of what was chosen, why, and all the information.
Perfect. Okay, guys. Hey,
Chair,
before we,
Chair Stedman, I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have two hand raised. Mr. Wassell looks like he must have got computer connection, and then Anne Marie Gott also has her hand raised, I believe, about this item.
okay, very well. Let's take those comments now.
Okay, Anne Marie, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to also point out from my public comment at the beginning of the meeting that obviously we had one attendee that had a problem trying to actually call in. That was either because they were unfamiliar with actually making a public comment online. And the fact of the matter is that when you are able to connect online, which only a fraction of our city actually has access and the capability to go ahead and use a system like GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar or Zoom, they, in the case of the program that the city has, they have no ability to actually call in and make a public comment unless they have a PIN code and people understand that, you know, how to use the system. And if someone puts in one number incorrectly, they actually cannot connect either to the meeting or they cannot connect to actually make a public comment. Besides the process that I actually went ahead and outlined to you earlier in the meeting, there's also another type of access that they can actually get, which is people call into a number, and when they want to make a comment on an item, they press the 9 key. And when that happens, they can go ahead and be called by a secretary. I'd also like to just make this other comment, which is none of the phone calls that we actually can make from our homes are toll free. And the county all offers toll-free options. So I don't know what issue the gentleman was having before, but you might ask him at the end of his public comment, because I think it's important for you to understand how the public interacts with your board as well as others. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne Marie.
Yeah, there's one other commenter, Mr. Wassell. So I will, Mr. Wassell, I will unmute you now and you can speak. Oh, you are self-muted. If you can unmute yourself, click the microphone button next to your name if you would like to speak. Mr. Wassell? It's now indicating offline next to his name, so he may have disconnected again.
Okay. Before we move off of this item, just one final point. Commissioner Peck brought up the point about focusing training on the city. Can you make just a brief comment on that, Vice Chairman?
Well, I can't really comment on his comment. I don't know. It's pretty difficult to describe the history of policing and only focus on Santa Barbara, because policing is a national institution. So, my guess is that concern may have come out of worrying that the training is going to pull national travesties and point the direction to our local police. And that's not the intention at all. The intention is to really simply and importantly educate the commissioners on the original functionality of the police unit and how that translates in today's policing. So we can't ignore history, and I understand some of the concerns and fears, and I think that's why it's so important that we have these trainings available.
Okay, I appreciate that. Did you need any or desire any further comment on that, Max?
Not at this time.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Lizzie. All right, guys. Let's move on to agenda item number 9, which is old business. And so are there any items that any of the commissioners would like to raise or ask at this time on old business item number 9? Okay, moving on to new business, item number 10. So here is where you guys have an opportunity to agendize an item for a future meeting. We already have one item that's advancing for a future meeting. Are there any others that any of you would like to agendize for our next meeting? All right. We're moving briskly through our agenda. That brings us to item number 11, the Fire Chief's monthly report.
Good afternoon. It's Chris Males. Can you see me right now?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. Great. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Stedman, commissioners. How are you? Chris Males, I'm your interim fire chief. I wanted to take a few minutes to provide you with some information. Hopefully you got an email that contains 2 documents regarding our department and how we measure response times and how we measure the effectiveness of how we're doing and how quickly we're getting to residents. So if I could ask, what I have is I have a 10-slide PowerPoint that really discusses in depth what we're talking about when we refer to response times. Response times mean 100 things to 100 different people. And so what we're going to do, if it's okay, is I wanted to boil down a little bit and kind of take a deep dive into every section or every time that we look at that is taken into account with getting our firefighters on scene. So what I'd like to do is, hopefully I can share my screen. Carol, are you able to let me share the screen yet?
I will do that right now.
Okay. And if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is go through about 8 slides first, and then we'll take, we'll get into, let me double check that it's working. Can you guys see my screen yet? Should be a PowerPoint.
Yep. Shiny fire engine.
Okay, great. Awesome. Excellent. 1 second here. I'm going to, there we go. Okay. So what I wanted to do is spend a few minutes with you, if it's okay, just going through about 6 or 8 slides. And then what we'll do is we'll open up one of the packets. We'll look at the monthly response times, and then we'll look at a quarterly document, which looks not at response times, but call types. And it will give you a really good idea of what your firefighters are seeing out on the streets. My hope is that perhaps at a future date, we can get into a little bit more detail with each specific item or each specific response time. But I think at the end of this discussion, you're going to have a lot of confidence in our 911 system, in how calls are processed, how quickly they're processed by our very talented dispatchers, how quickly our firefighters get out the door, how quickly, efficiently, and safely they travel to the scene. And then also, again, in the quarterly report, we'll talk about what types of calls we do respond to. So let's see here. I just want to make sure I can change. There we go. Okay. So tying in from last month's report that I gave to you, I just wanted to let you know that we are continuing in the process of our capital improvement plan of putting global positioning system, or what we call AVL, automatic vehicle location, into our dispatch plan, which if you recall, takes the fixed fire districts away and puts us on GPS, which is really going to help with response times. The next item that I have in the capital improvement plan is a community risk assessment, or they'll call it a community risk reduction / standards of cover study. And really what that is that allows the fire chief to take a look at what is our community's risk? What do our firefighters need to be prepared for? And are we optimally covered to handle those types of emergencies? So that was what we looked at last month. And so this month, what we're going to look at is data, and data drives everything. When I first started 28 years ago on the fire department, I don't think I could even spell data. we again had fixed fire districts, and the way those districts were decided and what fire engine would go to, say, Haley Street, is they would literally get out and drive from both stations to figure out who could get to the area first. And that's how they developed those districts. We've come a long way since then, and so we can't rely on anecdotal information anymore. We have to really look at response times. And it's really the key for public safety agencies to really get a handle and an understanding of whether they're really doing the best job for the public. So we contracted last year with a company called FireStats. They're a small company in Northern California. And they provide us both stock reports, and also we have a custom database that we can get into and look at everything. If I wanted to find out how many bicycle accidents there were during a 1 week period of time, I could find that out. If I wanted to know, if we've had how many car fires, I could look into that. It's important to note that it's really response times. We're not getting into, how big the fire got or anything like that. It's just this report simply looks at response times. So again, the standard documents, the two that I've given you today, are reports we get every month and every quarter. And then again, we can go in and customize reports. So how do we get the data? So our dispatch center, our combined communications center, it's a police and fire dispatch center. We have what's called a CAD, computer aided dispatch. And that CAD, what it does is once a month, it sends all of our response time data to FireStats, and FireStats quantifies that data and takes a look at it and then generates the reports. So the monthly reports, which we're going to talk about first, are focused on response times. And again, the next slide we're going to get into is what are response times and what are parts of it. TRT, total response time, is actually from the second the person maybe picks up their phone, dials 911, and as soon as that phone rings at dispatch, the time starts. And we actually can check how long it takes for our dispatchers to actually pick up the phone after it starts ringing. And our dispatch center is outstanding at that. So then the response time, or total response time, goes all the way through until the fire engine is on scene, and even can look at how long are we spending on scene. So, but really total response time is from that 911 call to the time that we get on scene. What can we change and how can we make it more efficient? Well, this is exactly what I was talking about last month with going to a GPS-based dispatch. So now the computer is going to tell the dispatcher when a fire engine is closest within 1/2 second. And it takes into account all mapping and routes and speed limits and all that stuff. So it's going to make the dispatching of our units, it will be correct the first time, every time, because it's, again, based on GPS. The other thing, let me go to the next slide here. I'll get to all the portions of it, but what are our goals first? One thing is we use NFPA, National Fire Protection Administration. They are a guiding agency that gives us information on everything from ladders to hose to fire engines. They have different documents. Well, NFPA 1221 is the standard for maintenance and use of emergency communications, and that includes response times. So they set parameters on what they think we need to achieve. So total response time for an urban fire department is 6 minutes and 15 seconds. We use 6 minutes and 15 seconds. The 911 call processing time per NFPA should be 60 seconds. Now, you'll see there's an asterisk next to that. The reason there is that dispatch centers that provide emergency medical dispatch, EMD, which our dispatch center does, they're actually allowed 90 seconds to process that call because there's a lot more questions that get asked, and the patients are then categorized into a response level. But we ratchet that back to 60 seconds, and here's why. What we do at the city of Santa Barbara is when someone calls 911 and says, I need an ambulance, we immediately, after getting the basic information of what's your address, what's your phone number, what's the problem, we actually send a fire truck right away before we go through all of the EMD protocols and actually figure out how critical the patient is. We launch the fire truck first. Then we let the dispatchers complete the medical dispatch process, and then they provide us with information and updates. So we use 60 seconds. Our turnout time, that is from the time that the lights go on in the station, the bells go on at the station, to the time that the fire engine station doors are going up and the fire engine is rolling out the door. Okay, that's turnout time. You might hear it called reflex time also. So we'll get into what that time is and how we do with that. And then the travel time is set at about 4 minutes. And you'll see that for the most part, we do pretty darn well. We definitely can do better, but we are making significant strides right now to see and to make sure that our response times, or our total response time, gets better every quarter. So total response time, and we're going to break it down in its parameters, its parts. So call processing time is from 911 pickup. The dispatcher picks up the phone and says, 911, what is the address of your emergency? Okay. So from the time that the dispatcher says, 911, what is the address of your emergency, until the call is actually dispatched, should be done in about 60 seconds. Now, I want to take you back to before August 20th of 2019, because that was a big day for the city fire department. Before that day, our dispatchers would be on the phone, and at the same time, they would be alerting the stations, and they would also be talking to the fire station to let them know over the radio the call that was happening. They would physically get on the radio and say, you know, engine 1, respond to a medical emergency, et cetera. On August 20th, we put into place a 4-year Measure C project. It was actually the first project rolled out by Measure C, and it was what was called a fire station alerting system. We went to a fully automated system. So again, let's take you back before August. The dispatcher would be on the telephone, talking on the telephone, while at the same time trying to actually verbalize the words to the apparatus via radio. On August 20th, we went to an automated alerting system. And what this is this is just an amazing text to voice program. What it does is the dispatcher receives the call, and once they have an address, and once they have what unit needs to respond, they simply hit one button, and all of that information that's in CAD is translated to voice. It's sent out over the internet, and then it's piggybacked onto the radio. So what I thought I'd do is, since we do have at least one new commissioner, is I wanted to give you an example of what Locution, that's the name of the company, what it does for us. So let me play this scenario out with you. 911 call rings, dispatcher answers the phone, and she says, the reporting party says, hey, 2 cars have just crashed at the intersection of State Street and Figueroa Street. Dispatcher puts in State Street and Figueroa Street. It recommends engine 71. They hit one button, and instantaneously, this is what you hear.
(16:38 hours), engine 71, traffic accident with injuries, East Figueroa Street and State Street. Engine 71, traffic accident with injuries, East Figueroa Street and State Street.
Okay, so that is an automated dispatch. That's an actual human voice, or what they call complete human voice. That is an actual human that recorded all of our street names and all of the custom terms that we use in the city of Santa Barbara. But what's important there is it's allowed the dispatcher to stay on the telephone and to get additional information while the crews are responding. So again, in less than a half a second after that dispatcher says to dispatch the units, the lights are on, that automation is at the station via internet. It's piggybacked onto the radio in case the units are out, and then begins turnout time. And so if the crews are in the station, you'll note that they have to get to the fire engine, and then they have to physically go en route. If they're out and about on city streets, you'll see that, you know, obviously they can go en route right away. And then again, travel time is how long it takes us to get from the fire station or wherever we responded from. Let's say the fire engine is at Cabrillo and State Street, and when the call came down at Figueroa and State, well, you know, it would take them that much time to get up State Street. So again, all of the above equals total response time. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is with you, is I wanted to just take a quick look. Let's see here, I'm getting my, there we go. Oops, I'm sorry. So what I want to do right now, I went ahead one slide, is take a look at the monthly report. And again, we don't have time to dive into every single little page, but what I'm hoping you could do is take a look at the December 2020 report, and we'll just take a look at how we're doing, okay? So if I could ask you to go to page 3, you'll see that where we are on page 3 is call processing time. And how are we doing? The answer is 54.7% of the time, we're getting those calls out in under a minute. Now, keep in mind that that's the benchmark, is 1 minute. So if we were 100% of the time we were getting calls out in 1 minute and 1 second, you could see that we would really drop to 0. So really the point is that most of our calls are getting out in under a minute. And then you'll see from the top table that around 1 minute and 15 seconds, 1 minute and 30 seconds, and then we drop way down. So the calls are really getting put out in a very, very timely manner. In the middle graph, I wanted to show you really quickly. I think this is so interesting. Look at graph number 2. Look at Q2 of 2020. What happened that caused our call processing time to drop down? That was when COVID started, okay? And what happened then was our dispatchers were mandated to ask additional COVID-related questions before the fire apparatus were sent. If you remember back when COVID started, there was a question: have you had any contact with anyone who has traveled outside the country in the last 14 days? That was one of our first questions back in March of 2020. So that's why our call processing time went down, because our dispatchers were asking a series of 3 to 5 additional questions that they had to actually get answers to before they could move on. At the very bottom table, you'll see a little longer period, but look over at the bottom right and you'll see that in March, April, May, and June, you'll see that the call processing time was way down. And then the dispatchers, we really streamlined those questions, so they were able to really take really more quickly get that information out. If we can move to the next page, page 4, and again, this is just to give you an idea, and if it's okay, I'd like to send these to you at least on a quarterly basis so you can see how we're doing.
Can I'm sorry, Chief, would you mind putting those slides on the PowerPoint on our screen so I can follow along? I'm not sure.
Okay, let me see if I can do that real quick.
Or you said it's page 4 of, because we have we have the Q4 2020 and the December 2020.
Yeah, so December
PowerPoint.
2020, I'm sorry, yeah, you want to be on the December 2020 page.
Okay.
It's not wanting to open, I apologize. Good old technology. Yeah, so Commissioner Rodriguez, thank you. So we're on, just to reiterate, we're on December 2020 on turnout time.
Okay.
So you'll see that 53% of the time we are getting out the door within 1 minute. One of the issues we have is our smaller stations versus our larger stations, and our 1-story stations versus 2-story stations. So Station 1, our main headquarters station here on Carrillo Street, it's tough to get out of the station because it's 2 stories and it's also a very large station. Our firefighters cover a big footprint. They can basically be working in anywhere within about a quarter of a block. So it does take us occasionally a little bit longer to get out the door. But for the most part, we're doing well. That turnout time and call processing time have greatly been reduced since we went to the automated dispatch. I don't have actual statistics, but we were looking at around a 20% decrease in call processing time and turnout time due to the automation. So it's definitely going in the right direction. The next page is travel time. And you'll see that 66.2% of the time we are getting to calls in 4 minutes or less. And then you can see that after 4 minutes, 4:15, 4:30, you'll see, and then a quick drop off. So you really get an idea of we're getting there right around 4 minutes of travel time, 5 minutes of travel time anywhere in the city. Now, when I talk about customizing reports, we can actually drill down by engine company and say, how long does it take Station 7 up on the Riviera? How long does it take for them to get to calls? That kind of thing. So the last page I'd like to bring to your attention to is page 6, which is total response or total response time. And you'll see, once again, that about 53% of the time, from the time the 911 call lights up at the dispatch center to the time our firefighters are getting on scene at the emergency, 6 minutes and 15 seconds or less, 53% of the time we're doing that. And then again, you can see that just over 6:15, you'll see that we've got a large amount, and a large amount of calls, and then you'll see it drops down dramatically after that. So in other words, we're doing fairly well. Can we do better? Yes, we can. What efficiencies can we bring in? Well, again, we're doing our best with call processing. We're doing our best with turnout time, again, with the automation. With travel time, it's really tough to tell our firefighters to drive quicker because they need to be safe. We have 40,000-pound fire engines that we're driving across the city of Santa Barbara, and we don't want to tell people to drive unsafely. So, but there are some efficiencies we can install. There actually, we'll be looking at in the future is a GPS-based system that actually turns the lights green. As the fire engine approaches the intersection, a GPS signal actually changes the light to a green light, because you can see that slowing a fire truck down to a stop sign or to a red light, looking in both directions and then traveling through, those seconds add up. So if we can cut that down, that's something we'll be looking at in the future. One more slide for you and we'll get into the quarterly report. Okay, the Fire Stats quarterly report. So you will see Santa Barbara Fire Department Q4 2020 is a different focus, completely different focus. It doesn't look at response times, it looks at call types. And what are we seeing out on the streets of Santa Barbara? But I need to give a little disclaimer. Our dispatchers use over 90 computer-aided dispatch codes that they put in based on what type of call it is. Okay, is it a tree fire? Is it a medical emergency? Is it a vehicle fire? Is it a traffic accident with extrication? Is it an ocean rescue? They have those codes memorized. But what we've done in Fire Stats is we've pared it down a bit. And I'll give you an example. There are 4 different medical emergencies that are different medical emergency codes that our dispatchers use. Medical emergency, which is ME. They use MEPD, medical emergency with PD response. That would say be a bicycle accident or an assault, something like that. They use medical emergency CMDC, and that's their mobile data computer in the fire engine. They're doing that because they're alerting the firefighters that they need to take a look at what the call notes say, because there may be a safety issue involved. The 4th is a medical emergency assault with weapon. So that just gives you an idea that embedded within us, what I would say a simple medical emergency are 4 different CAD codes that our dispatchers use. So what we've done in Fire Stats is we've pared that down, just a medical emergency. And so what I'd like to do is bring your attention to page 3, if I could. And on page 3, table 1, you'll see down the left-hand column, starting with assist, these are the codes that we've pared it down to. So we have assist, fire, vegetation, fire, fire vehicle, hazardous condition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then this first table compares Q4 of 2019 to Q4 of 2020. And you'll see that we're cruising along within about 100 calls of what we did last year. But what's important to take a look at is, I think, the pie chart down at the bottom. You'll clearly see that 74.5% of our calls are medical emergency. That is very common for a municipal fire department. I was just talking to a fire chief yesterday, and he was telling me that a department that he had worked with formerly was somewhere around 85% of their calls were medical calls. So about 74% are medical, about 10% are fires. And then you'll see different smaller miscellaneous numbers. So again, the vast majority of our business is medical and fire, and we run a lot of public assist calls. So you'll see that assist is 5.8 or almost 6% of our calls. And that can be everything from a lift assist, helping someone get off the floor that's not injured, to a juvenile locked in a vehicle, to a number of other things where the public needs our assistance. Maybe they need a water line shut off or something like that. Moving to the next page, and again, we don't have a lot of time to drill into it, but it's just a different way of looking at the unique type of our incidents. And you'll see over a period of time that we fluctuate. We do fluctuate by season. We do fluctuate, we'll get into it. We fluctuate by time of day significantly. There are definitely ebbs and flows in our 24-hour shift. But again, this table on page 4 lets you just kind of take a look differently at the way that the types of calls that we're going to. On page 5, this is where the calls are broken down by station. And you can clearly see that some of our stations are busier and some are slower. So our stations down in the core area, station 1 is right here on Carrillo Street. Station 2 is on the lower east side. Station 3 is on the upper east side. Station 4 is on the north end, upstate in Ontario. Station 5 is over by La Cumbre Junior High. Station 6 is on the Mesa. Station 7 is up on the Riviera, and Station 8 is our airport station. And you'll clearly see that our airport station is very slow. And I always think to myself, I'm glad they're very slow because we don't want to be having problems at the airport. And obviously air travel is very safe, but it's really good that we have those firefighters there just in case. We remember from last year, the C-130 that crashed on landing, and our fire crews were out there right away. So let's move to page 6 if we could, and this gets a little confusing here. Page 6 includes every single fire apparatus that is in our computer-aided dispatch. And that includes our aircraft fire trucks, that includes our battalion chiefs, that includes our brush trucks, that includes some county fire trucks, that includes harbor patrol boat. So I'll take you down to about 2/3 down that page, you'll see E71. And E71 through 77, those are our frontline fire engines. So you'll see the largest amount of calls are being handled by our frontline fire engines. If you go up just above, you'll see 3-digit numbers, engine 171, engine 172. What those are is, if engine 71 is out of service, let's say they're getting something replaced at motor pool, the crew goes into engine 171. That's a reserve fire engine. So really what you're looking at is between engine 71 and 171, that's really all the calls that were handled by that crew during the month. So anyway, it just gives you an idea of the majority of the calls are being handled by our engine companies. Moving on to page 7, you can see by month and by day of the week how busy we are. So while I'd be hesitant to draw any conclusions just based on 1 quarter of activity, over an annual report, you can clearly see that we have days of the week where we're busier. Anecdotally, it's kind of tough to draw conclusions, but maybe Tuesdays and Sundays look a little slower than other days. But again, off a quarterly report, I can't definitively draw that conclusion. Moving on to page 8 is by time of day, the number of calls by time of day. And if we look at the bottom of the graph, you'll see that we're pretty slow in the middle of the night, midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning. There's not a lot of calls, but in my experience, here's what happens in the middle of the night. While the calls are fewer, they're often more serious, okay? People that become ill and call 911 at 3 o'clock in the morning are often very, very sick. Fires that get started at 3 o'clock in the morning can be much more catastrophic than a fire at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because maybe no one's home at 3 in the morning or people are sleeping, you get the idea. But you can clearly see that around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, we have a spike. And then around travel time, 4 or 5 o'clock at night, we also have a spike. I also found it a little bit interesting to note that right at 2 a.m., you'll see that our call volume goes up a little bit. And unfortunately, that might be related to bars and restaurants closing and potentially people getting on the road. So that's just a quick look at those reports. Again, my hope is that I can go into a little bit more detail with you and let you know a little bit more in the next months or quarters, let you know what we're doing to better our response times. I will be centrally looking at when we roll out GPS dispatch. you will see a drop in our response times that will be significant, and that'll be a really good day for us. So that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Yeah, I have a question, Chief. One of the graphs, graph number 2 on the monthly report.
Sure.
Yeah, so you guys, I mean, the call processing time dipped really low, right?
Yep.
And then it got up to speed there by the end of the year, Q4. So that shows excellent management, I think, on the part of the fire department. How fast did you guys retool what was actually being said on the telephone in terms of the questions asked?
Great, Commissioner Stedman, thank you for the question. That's a great question. The Emergency Medical Dispatch Program is actually supervised by the county's Emergency Medical Services Agency, and they're an arm of public health. When our firefighters respond to calls, we work under the policies and protocols of Santa Barbara County EMS Agency. They are the ones that sent us the questions, and they are the ones that modified the questions. We've only done, I think, 2 or 3 modifications. But it was initially, you bring up a really good point, and the data shows it was tough for our dispatchers it wasn't linked into the computer. So our dispatchers were having to go to another section, ask the questions, and then go back into the computer. And then the computer program that we use to manage medical calls actually started importing those questions into the computer. And I think that's why we saw such a sharp decrease in processing time, because they weren't having to shift in between screens and it was all right there. The questions that we're asking right now have been in place for months, and they're is anyone sick or ill with a fever? Is anyone having shortness of breath? Is anyone having a cough? And so, but one other thing too, I'll expand on your question. We actually saw turnout times increase at around the same time. And the reason for that is we were asking our firefighters to put more medical equipment on before they rolled out the door. This was obviously a society-changing event. Our firefighters were told to basically fully encapsulate. So they put on a medical jacket, they put on an N95 mask, and they put on their goggles before they get into the fire truck. And although that doesn't sound like a lot, that's precious seconds. So, but what we wanted to do is we basically told our folks, get it right. Get your equipment on, then get out the door. So we expected times to go up a little bit, and then our folks now, they're so used to putting that stuff on that they've really recovered, and they're very quick at it now.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, you answered my second question before I had an opportunity to ask you. I mean, what are they asking now? So everything's baked in, things are flowing smoothly. We're probably going to see similar times in Q1, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll expand a little bit just so you know. It's really interesting. I don't know if anybody listens to the radio, but we don't give the information over the radio. If we have a COVID positive patient, if somebody says, hey, I'm sick with a fever, we have COVID, we don't give that information over the radio. That information is sent via mobile data computer, and they get an update on their computer, and they can look and see. And right on their computer, it says patient meets COVID protocols. And so it lets our folks know when they're en route what they're potentially going into. But I'll say that they really are, it's standard now. You will not see a firefighter on a medical call without an N95 mask on. And if you start looking at the newspaper and start watching television with incidents, you'll clearly see firefighters in masks, even on traffic accidents. So it's just become standard protocol for us. But each one of those maneuvers, for lack of a better term, takes seconds to put that stuff on. So now, after a year into it, week 52, by the way, of the pandemic, we're getting darn good at getting to calls quickly and efficiently.
Well, I think the data supports that. So good job, Chief.
Thank you. Any other questions for me?
Chief Males, we did have a question in the question, and Chair Stedman, we do have hand raised regarding this item, and unfortunately the previous item. I didn't realize that Anna Marie had wanted to speak on number 10 as well, I believe. And then I did have a question in the question box. At one point, Mr. Howard Green had asked if AMR responses also show. I'm assuming he meant on our reports.
Yeah, I can answer that question. Commissioner Stedman, commissioners, to Mr. Green, no. This is simply the Santa Barbara City Fire Department. American Medical Response is dispatched by the County Sheriff's Department, and they would have their own data to support their response times. With that said, the County EMS Agency, which I said is our governing body for medical calls, does have access to all of our medical response times, and they also, of course, have access to AMR's response times. But the short answer is no, this is just fire trucks in the city of Santa Barbara.
Carol, the public comment, is that on the chief's, one of the public comments, is that on the chief's report, item 11?
Correct, yes. That's,
Okay.
yes, Ms. Scott has her hand raised for that, and she may want to comment on item number 10 as well.
I think, well, absolutely, but maybe we can just, we'll wait until the chief is completely done, I guess, and her comment, then we can revert back to number 10 for Ms. Scott.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. Do you want me to unmute her now?
Yeah, and she
Okay.
can speak on
Yes.
item 11.
Yes.
On
Okay.
item 11.
All right, Ms. Scott, I'm going to unmute you.
Thank you very much. And also thank you for deciding to reopen public comments for item number 10.
Yep.
Regarding the current, slides that we just went through, someone did mention, that it would be nice to actually have the tables, in the PowerPoints. And I just wanted to reiterate that it would be extraordinarily helpful for the public, not only to have those tables inside of the presentation so that they don't have to refer to anything else. But, something that's really irritating for me with a lot of our city, commissions, as well as city councils and boards, is that PowerPoint presentations that have been created by the staff are actually only available if you make a public records request at the end of the meeting. And when, the city staff has taken the time to put together an agenda and submitted information to you in advance, and sometimes even boards get PowerPoint presentations in advance, those PowerPoint presentations are not actually available for the public to actually download before a meeting or review them. And so I would make another request that you actually require the PowerPoint presentations to be posted with the agendas for your meetings. That way the public can download those particular PowerPoint presentations. They can make a public comment. If you guys ever, decide to add a email address, to your agendas, they can make a public comment on anything, or even ask a question, pose a question for you to ask someone. But so those are my critiques for the presentation. It's it was a really interesting presentation that I haven't seen before, and I really appreciate the new information about the processes the fire department has actually implemented since the beginning of the pandemic. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Yeah, Carol, I just, what I meant before was, I wanted to make sure that the Chief Mayles was done with his report, and then we can get Anne Marie back on for item number 10, okay?
I apologize. I'm not sure what happened. All of a sudden, my web session ended, I guess. I guess that was my way of being done. But I am, Chair Stedman, I am done with my presentations. Have any other questions?
Yeah, all the, I don't know if you heard what Ms. Scott commented on, but she just would like public availability in advance of any kind of PowerPoint presentations that we end up displaying at the Fire and Police Commission meetings, the public meetings. So noted.
I'll take that back to the city and I did hear, I came back on when she was talking about wanting to see the tables. So I will, when my next presentation, I'll make sure that I insert the tables into the PowerPoint. I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, that's where all the gold is, in those tables.
And Chair Stedman, I will also attach Chris's handouts and his PowerPoint as documents with this meeting online.
Excellent. Thanks, Carol. Okay, thank you too, Chief. So now, if you want to bring Ms. Scott back on for item number 10, we can do that, Carol, if she's still there.
Anna Marie, do you want to speak on item number 10?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Item number 10 actually was something where the request of the board and to find out if, the commission, and to find out if the commission wanted to have any specific future items on the agenda. And I just wanted to refer to my second request in the email that I sent earlier today. And that actually is a request that the police department and the fire department not only provide you with information on the percentage of their budgets that actually are related to alcohol or homeless issues. So what percentage of their budget is actually spent on those two issues? The reason I'm asking is because there's an extraordinary amount of money that the city spends, not only for the fire department, but for the police department. And I have been told that someone estimates that approximately 30% of the police department's budget is actually spent on alcohol-related issues. That's anything from assault and domestic violence to DUIs, which, by the way, would need to be defined for you. But that's money that's taken out of the taxpayers have paid, and it's a huge amount. If it is 30%, that's over $13 million, and it would be really great if the city passed an alcohol ordinance and began collecting fees for all of the services that it provides to businesses that actually sell alcohol. And one of the big places that actually receives an extraordinary amount of police services is the downtown for alcohol-related issues with all of the bars and restaurants, which is not even discussed in the new alcohol ordinance that is even being proposed at the city. And so I think it would be a really good idea for us to have those dollar amounts to begin the discussion, to open it up for more than retail and to include bars and restaurants. Thank you.
Thanks, Emery. Would any of the commissioners like to agendize that item? Maybe specifically the liaisons, because those are budget-related issues. It might take a little bit of scoping. Would you guys like to either include that in your report, or would the commission in general prefer to agendize that item, or both?
Chair, we might want to agendize it for the record, and then I'm happy to try to bring that into the police report for sure.
Excellent, Max. So do you want to make a motion for that, Max?
Very good. Proposing a motion to agendize, forgive me if I got the language incorrect, but basically alcohol ordinance spending and how that relates to bars and restaurants. That's what my notes say.
Okay.
No.
I'm sorry. Did someone say something? Did one of the commissioners make a comment? Okay,
I think that may have been the public speaker.
I
noting
had
that
her,
that's not what she said, and
I still
I don't-
had her speaking.
yeah,
I don't think that's what exactly she was requesting.
Let me unmute her again.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anne Marie, do you want to clarify?
Yes, I do. I was asking that the police, as well as the fire departments, estimate the amount of money that they receive in their budget that they spend on, one, homelessness, and two, alcohol-related crimes. I guess you could say it's crimes. And then to define what alcohol-related crime is. That is actually in the email that I sent to you, and you might refer to that in your motion.
yeah, that's your paragraph 2, right, Ms. Scott?
Yes, it is. And you can also look at this, the next paragraph that discusses the alcohol ordinance to give you more clarity.
Okay. All right, thanks. Max, do you have that in front of you?
Yes, sir. So basically, we're going to get, for me, specifically the police department's estimates on how much they're spending on homelessness and then alcohol-related crimes, and then a definition of what includes or what is the umbrella term that encompasses alcohol crimes.
Very well. Okay. Then I guess maybe Jeff could dig up the same information from the fire department. And your motion is still on the table, Max, but I saw John Doimus hop on. Did you want to provide any input, John?
No, it's pretty clear that the liaisons, so it's not really anything that needs to be agendized. Liaisons can do it and can talk to each department and they can report out from their conversations. And that's a good way to handle it. So, no,
Yeah.
thank you.
I concur 100%. Okay. Thanks, Max. Appreciate you hopping on that. You too, John. Giving you some work. If you look at Anne Marie Gott's written communication prior to the meeting, you'll see her paragraph 2 and some of the scope of what she's curious about and what we can report out on at our next meeting. Okay. Are there any other public comments, Carol?
No others at this time.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to item number 12, which is the police chief's monthly report.
Good evening, everyone, commissioners. As you know, the chief has recently retired. So I have been holding down the fort until Chief Malekian starts on Monday morning. So he will be here, but I just wanted to give you a few updates. And I've been obviously listening this whole time. So I wanted to start by explaining why you probably have not seen ComStat reports for the last month or so.
Right.
And so I'll kind of explain it. And I believe in the next month, you should start seeing some reporting. The dramatic difference is as of January 1 of 2021, the FBI has changed from the Uniform Crime Report, or UCR, which you probably always heard of UCR Part 1 and 2 crimes. Part 1's predominantly being violent crimes. There's 8 enumerated crimes in Part 1, and then Part 2 predominantly being property crimes. FBI has now gone to a NIBRS system, and they will be reporting NIBRS numbers. NIBRS is significantly different from UCR. So for instance, in UCR, you had Part 1 crimes had 8 crimes that were reported. If a crime occurred that wasn't one of those 8, it wasn't counted. In the NIBRS, there are over 54 crimes that are enumerated and reported, and they have Group A and Group B crimes. So there's a lot more crimes, information that they're gathering to be more analytical and more responsive to the community. The other side of that is that the UCR did a rule called the hierarchy rule. And what it did is it said if a crime occurs in a given time in a given location, we will only count, we being the FBI or the law enforcement agent, will only count the most serious crime in that hierarchy. Homicide being obviously the most serious. So any other crimes that occurred, felonies or not, were not counted in the UCR, only that one crime. And in fact, in the UCR numbers, if there was a mass casualty event, that would be one homicide on the hierarchy rule in UCR, regardless of how many individuals unfortunately lost their life. NIVERS is different. NIVERS says there is no hierarchy rule, and I want to know the totality of the crime that occurred in a given place, at a given location, by the same offender. And it gives a better picture of what actually occurred or didn't occur, as opposed to just deciding what was the most significant or highest hierarchy crime. So those two things are dramatically different than what we've done for the last, I would say, 35 years with the UCR. So when you see these numbers, it is going to be dramatically different. It is going to look different. And if you go off of what used to be the UCR numbers, it's going to look like there's a dramatic increase in crime, when in fact it's not. We're just counting the totality of what's actually potentially occurring. So we're making that change here at the department in our computer systems, with the FBI, and with our reporting to the state of California and the national government. So with that, that's probably why you haven't seen as many CompStats, but we can certainly make sure that we get you some of the traditional information. And I also want to make sure on piggyback on what Chief Mills has talked about on the response times. Priority 1, 2, 3, and 4 for police department. Priority 1 being life and death emergencies. Priority 2 being potentially life and death. Priority 3 being urgent, and priority 4 being cold or report calls. We're actually doing pretty good with our response times, overall response times. For January and through December, we were 5.7, 5 minutes and 7 seconds, which we want to be under 7 minutes for priority 1. We were 18.8 on priority 2, and we generally want to be under 14.5 minutes. And priority 2 is, priority 2 and 3 are probably our highest volume calls for service. Priority 3, we're at 32 minutes, and we'd like to be under 30 minutes. And priority 4, we were at 38 minutes, and we like to be under 50 minutes. To put that also into enumerated values, we average 4 calls for service from the public per hour, per day, every day, which is just about 2,900 calls for service in a month. Now, sometimes our heavier call volume than other times. And when you think about 24-hour clock, sometimes between 3 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, we don't get any calls. So that then brings more calls for service into those other times. Again, like Chief Mills said, at 3 o'clock in the morning, if somebody calls the police department, they need you. And those are few and far between. As far as crimes are concerned, we are seeing a slight uptick in aggravated assaults and people getting in physical altercations. When I say slight, we have 13 more this month in January than we did last year in January. That was a little bit significant when you also take into the fact that last January we didn't have COVID. So that is a little concerning for us. Property crimes are slightly up. Again, January of 2020 to January of 21. When I say slight, it's probably 5 to 10%. Again, I think that's significant when you look at some of the COVID constraints, things along those lines. Our overall arrest statistics for January 20 to 21 year to date, we're down about 50%, 50% on felony arrests from January to January, comparing just those months. I again will say that in COVID times, and also the change in what is considered a crime, what's now misdemeanors, and also what other things we've been able to get other treatments, other restorative efforts, and other items too. That's hugely important as well. So it's providing customer service and providing things to our community in a different way. And things don't always have to end in an arrest. Misdemeanor arrests are down about 60%. And again, that could be associated with taking crime reports, finding other alternative, other community-based mediations to go through, things along those natures. So it seems dramatic, but when we look at COVID and all the other changes we're making and things, I think that all goes into the story. And that's overall what I wanted to make sure I reported. And I'm here to answer any of your questions or any of your concerns. And that's it.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Peck, did you have, I think you had a question about the, about activity at our beaches, right?
Thank you, Chair. And this almost addresses the question I'll follow up with some of those budget reports. But Captain Arroyo, I'm just curious, as COVID has happened, we've seen an increase in, I hate to even call them homeless people, right? But we have across the city. For a while, there was a lot of encampments down by the beach. And then I saw that the city put up signs that said like no camping allowed, and that kind of cleared everything up. So I'm just actually curious about what the policy is in the city for these people. So I don't know if it's just like a, hey, we've seen you here 2 days in a row, you can't be here this long, please move. Is that what the policy is currently, or?
Well, Commissioner Peck, I will answer it this way, that people experiencing homelessness at any given time, unfortunately, there are people that and especially right now, have tough times. And we're here to support anybody and everybody in society, first and foremost. Just because they're experiencing homelessness doesn't make a difference to us in that sense. The city of Santa Barbara does have a non-camping ordinance on the beach. That is a municipal code that is enforceable given certain constraints of warning, educating, communicating first, giving alternatives, making sure that we have CityNet or other community-based organizations there to help foster people into homes or into treatment or into other positive avenues. We never want to come at somebody without giving them alternatives and trying to support them through the difficult times that they're having. So yes, those signs are up. Yes, you shouldn't camp on the beach. But there's a lot of steps that go into it before we would get there. Environmental services with the city of Santa Barbara is actually the lead department that looks at any quote unquote camps or large sites from the environmental perspective first and foremost. Fire department obviously comes in for the safety side, code enforcement comes in for the safety side. It is truly a team effort, and we are just part of that team in making sure that everybody's safe and that everybody has the information that we can provide to them. Ultimately, if we do have to write a citation, it is after extensive communication, warning, and alternatives before we get there.
Thank you, Captain Arroyo. Quick follow-up. I understand that it does take a team effort. I am curious though, because Goleta had an instance a couple of months ago where an encampment caught fire over by the freeway, and that caused a lot of damage. On a couple of intersections around Milpas and Garden Street, we're starting to see some more encampments build up kind of in those pockets in the off ramps. Is that something that, even just from like a safety standpoint for those folks that are experiencing homelessness at that time, is that something that we're trying to address also, or?
Commissioner Peck, I would strongly suggest anyone who's in the city of Santa Barbara that sees something that they're concerned about that is a safety or environmental concern. There is a hotline and there is an email address and a phone number to call to City of Santa Barbara Environmental Services. They're the lead agency that looks at any and all encampments or any other locations where there's an accumulation of property owned by anyone that potentially could cause harm or safety issues for anybody in the city of Santa Barbara. Once they look at it, determine what's going on, they find the best avenues and bring together the team of code enforcement, fire, police, or other community-based organizations, CityNet, and others to try to resolve the situation and bring it to a safe conclusion.
Really appreciate your knowledge and thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Would it be possible, can I maybe invite CityNet or SB Act to come to the next meeting and present a presentation on their collaborative, I think they're calling it their collective impact approach to responding to homelessness. I think I've attended some of their weekly meetings and they're doing some phenomenal work. The sad thing is it takes an estimate of about a year to get somebody from the streets into permanent placement. And they can really highlight some of the challenges, the COVID restrictions that are causing further obstacles, and really the work that they're doing, collaborating with Santa Barbara PD, fire, and some of the local homeless providers, service providers. So could we add that to the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Commissioner Rodriguez, I can absolutely try to facilitate that. If you agendize it, we will absolutely do it because we are on, if not weekly, daily calls with them in various different ways. So I completely hear you. Thank you very much. And they are doing phenomenal work.
Okay. So would we have that be a separate agenda item or would that fall under the chief's report?
I think we could probably incorporate that in the chief's, as part of the chief's presentation.
Okay. that
Maybe
would be
maybe
great.
you can give Acting Chief Malakian a heads up on that, Captain Arroyo.
I will do so.
Perfect.
And I have a question for Captain Arroyo. Thank you for taking the helm, the temporary helm between the chiefs right now. How is the department doing? Where we lost a phenomenal chief to retirement, and we have a temporary in, and it's been a wild summer between Black Lives Matter movements and community demands and COVID issues. How is the department doing?
It has been a challenging year for everyone, and I will tell you that you have some phenomenal employees and personnel at the police department, and everyone is honored to work here, work towards the common goal of providing service to the city and all of the citizens and all of the folks. Every day I'm astonished by the things that people do here. So I will say that they are honored and they do really care about each and every person in the city. It has been challenging, and that brings about a lot of stress in different ways. And some of the things that Chief Luno did and brought about a wellness sergeant, a lot of the partnerships we have with our At Ease and with our police foundation. And then again, just the phenomenal people we have that care, have huge hearts and take care of each other. That goes a long way.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for keeping your hands on the wheel, Captain Arroyo. We appreciate it.
Chair Stedman, we do have a hand raised.
Okay, let's recognize that person.
Ms. Scott, I'll unmute you.
Sorry, you're going to hear from me a lot today, Commissioner, since I'm attending this meeting. I just wanted to make a few public comments. One was, it would be really nice that instead of any verbal reports, that we actually get a PowerPoint presentation for the police department's reports, because obviously no one has any access to any information, and actually most staff reports with the city require a PowerPoint presentation. The next one is, I've actually had to make a few phone calls to the police actually through dispatch. And it was related to the homeless actually lying on the sidewalks under the underpasses. And I just want to ask, what type of training, and if we can get any sort of report with the training for the police and the new COVID-19 urgency ordinances and the sit-lie ordinances, to what extent people have been trained and what the police department actually will be following moving forward. The reason I ask is because there's a sit-lie ordinance that was passed during the pandemic regarding the Milpas and Cacique underpasses and up to, on Milpas up to Quintos, that no one, including the homeless, is allowed to sit or lie on the sidewalks. And it was because of just, a lot of public complaints regarding health and public safety and people's inability to pass anyone lying on the street in that area if they were camping because of COVID. People were walking in the street rather than on the sidewalks. And there was a lot of trash accumulating. There's also a new ordinance that was just passed this week, and it has to do with the urgency ordinance. And one of the clauses in it was about live music and performances. In the city council meeting, they said that chapter 19.6 was still going to be enforced and that the public land was not going to be an exclusion, meaning that noise in the middle of the night from public, musicians and amplifiers and, live performances was actually going to be enforced upon. So I'd just like to get some information, and maybe you can ask that this be included in the report for next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Okay, sounds like you're taking a lot of notes this meeting, Max and Captain Royal. All right, do we have any other public commenters, Carol?
No others, thank you.
Okay, all right. And so item number 13, guys, I think we've already addressed that actually in item number 7. So you can blame that on me. We should have just eliminated either 7 or 13. So we've already covered that, the fire and police liaison reports. We'll move on to staff communications, item number 14. And actually, I have a question for our vice chair. First of all, congratulations on getting selected to the Formation Commission. Maybe you can just give us a very high level, viewpoint on how that's going to proceed and how you might be able to expand the scope of your contribution to the Fire and Police Commission.
Sure. Well, I will report back on that in the staff communications every month. We have not had a meeting yet. Our first meeting will be mid-March. There were 13 community members selected and 2 alternates, and it is a very, very diverse group, diverse in age, gender, sexual orientation, profession, race. It's a very deeply diverse group. And looking at the folks that were selected, I think it's going to be a quite productive and we're going to get a lot done. So I'm looking forward to our first meeting. We don't have an agenda. It's a loose agenda where I think we may be picking a chair and a vice chair and discussing the organizational structure of the group. And I will keep you posted.
Thank you so much. And this is staff communications, commissioners. So if there's anything you guys want to discuss or bring up or point out that's going on in the community, now's the time to do it. If it was on your mind throughout the meeting, you want to mention it, you can certainly do that at this time. All right. I guess we're we're getting down to it. Before we take up our final item, I just want to say thank you to Captain Arroyo again, and thank you to Chief Males and to our ever-present Assistant City Attorney, Mr. Doimus, who's always there, and to you, Carol, and Laura, who I think is probably off camera. So thanks a lot to the city staff. You guys are doing a great job. Yeah, and clap for those guys. They're doing a great job. All right, so do we have a motion for adjournment for this meeting?
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second? I second the motion. And so does Commissioner Travis Teague. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 All right, this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, and the public.